All right, let's talk about a piece of tech you've probably never heard of, but I can almost guarantee it's handled your money. Seriously, this isn't just some dusty old software story. We're diving into the history of a hidden hero, an unsung protagonist that was, and kind of still is, the engine of trust for the whole global economy.
I mean, really, think about it for a sec. Before the cloud, before SQL was the only language anyone talked about, how in the world did the global financial system keep track of trillions of transactions with almost perfect accuracy? What was that invisible engine humming away in the background, making sure your bank account was actually correct?
Well, the answer, for a whole lot of the world's biggest institutions, was this thing called Datacom/DB. It was a true mainframe hero, just chugging away tirelessly in the background. A really vital piece of our tech history that, let's be honest, most of us have never even been introduced to.
Okay, so to really get what made this thing so powerful, we've got to go back, way back to where it all started, the 1970s. We're talking about the mainframe era, right? An age of computing that was all about raw power and just massive scale. So Datacom/DB pops up in the 70s, developed by a company called Applied Data Research, or ADR. And its mission? Man, it was laser-focused. It was designed for one thing, IBM mainframes. And it was built to work like hand in glove with COBOL. COBOL, the programming language that was, and let's be real, in a lot of ways still is, the absolute bedrock of business logic.
And that partnership with COBOL, that is so key. I mean, you literally can't talk about Datacom/DB without talking about COBOL. They were like a legendary duo, purpose-built for one job, handling the world's most critical business transactions. No messing around.
So how did it actually work? Well, it wasn't a relational database like you're probably used to today. No, it used something called a network data model. Now, what does that mean? Just imagine a web, okay? But in this web, all the connections, all the relationships between different pieces of data are already set in stone. They're predefined and physically linked up. The goal here wasn't flexibility. It was all about raw, predictable speed.
And this comparison right here, it really gets to the heart of the whole philosophy behind it. Think about it this way. With the network model, everything is pre-connected for max performance. It's like a high-speed bullet train on a fixed track. You know exactly the path your data is going to take. Now, modern relational databases, they're more like drones. They can create connections on the fly, right? Super flexible. But Datacom/DB, it chose the speed and the absolute predictability of that train every single time. And that choice, that obsession with performance, it had massive, real-world consequences. I mean, this wasn't some academic piece of software for a lab. No way. This was the engine running behind the scenes of the entire global economy. We're talking about sectors where failure just wasn't an option. Okay, first and foremost, banking. We're talking about your account balance, the debits, the credits, everything. For a ton of major banks, Datacom/DB was the system of record. It was the ultimate source of truth for their customer ledgers. The buck stopped there.
But its reach didn't stop there, not by a long shot. The insurance industry? Oh yeah, they relied on it heavily. Just think about the sheer complexity of processing millions of claims, policies, and payments. You needed a system that was not only fast, but also just faultlessly accurate.
And of course, that kind of reliability made it absolutely essential for the public sector too. We're talking everything from tax agencies to social security systems. Governments needed databases that could handle just immense scale, but with absolute rock-solid integrity. And yeah, Datacom/DB was a trusted choice.
So, if you boil it all down, here's the crucial point. It all comes down to a few key things, all built on a foundation of trust. First, it was incredibly fast and totally predictable, thanks to that network model we talked about. And second, it became deeply embedded in the core business logic, thanks to its buddy COBOL. You put all that together, and you get a system that these huge institutions could just fundamentally trust. And that idea, a legacy of trust, that really is the heart of this whole story. Look, this was never just about storing data. It was about safeguarding it, guarding it in these super high-stakes environments where a single error, it could have totally catastrophic consequences. So how did it earn that trust? Well, it was built on some really specific, really smart technical features. For one, it had super strict schema definitions. That just means the data structure was rigid, so you couldn't easily mess it up or corrupt it. Then it had sophisticated data locking and journaling, which is a fancy way of saying it could handle a bunch of transactions at once without them crashing into each other.
And finally, it had these robust recovery systems to make sure that even if the whole mainframe went down, not a single transaction would be lost. Not one.
And this quote, it just sums it all up perfectly, doesn't it? Datacom/DB wasn't flashy, there was no slick user interface, no clever marketing, it wasn't trying to be the cool new kid on the block. It was built for one reason: to be a rock-solid, unshakable foundation for the world's most important information.
And that brings us to the ultimate takeaway here. You know, we often hear the word legacy, and we think old, outdated, time to replace it, but that totally misses the point with something like this. This technology isn't just legacy, it's ledger grade. And what that means is it was built to a standard of integrity, of auditability that is completely timeless. It was designed from the ground up to be an infallible record of truth. So that leaves us with a final question, something to really chew on. In our world today, right, where it feels like we hear about some massive data breach almost every week, what lessons can we take away from systems like Datacom/DB? What can we learn from an era when tech was designed from the ground up, not just for a laundry list of features, but for absolute uncompromising trust?